Joe Samo on the mic is rocking. San Diego live. Hey, my friends, I'm sorry I miss you. I had to take a break for a couple weeks, and I'm super excited to be back. Every day I'm like, I can't wait to do the podcast again. I can't wait to do the podcast again. So we're going to go through this book that I absolutely love. One of my favorite books. It's called Slaughterhouse-Five from Kurt Vonnegut. And then, of course, at the very end, we're going to do dad jokes. Okay, I've been getting a lot of dad jokes from you folks, and I keep them coming. I really dig them. All right, so this book is a World War II book, and it's so interesting. And the biggest problem I had getting ready for today was figuring out how I'm going to give you kind of this, a 40-minute or a 30-minute clip of this book, because I could talk about this for months. Okay. First, about the author himself, the late Kurt Vonnegut. So he's a philosopher. He was a college professor. He was born in 1922, and he served in the war, in World War II. And he eventually got a Purple Heart. So he's a Purple Heart veteran. And then he was a philosopher and a college professor, an author. He wrote a bunch of books. He was captured by the Germans in the Battle of the Bulge, and then he was a prisoner of war for a little while until the end of the war. And so this book is not his. It's not necessarily his story. It's kind of it's a fictional book, but he draws on his experience, and it's funny because it's very, very philosophical, but it's very funny, and it's an easy read. So it's like just everything. And there are, and of course, as a lawyer, I'll bring up the legal issues, as they come up. And so that's his story. And the book is about, his time as a POW in Dresden. And it was interesting because the World War II bombing in Dresden was really crazy. It was kind of toward the end of the war, and the Allies, especially the Americans and the British, just bombed the living daylights out of Dresden, just everywhere. And there was arguments later. Was it strategic? Was it not strategic to bomb, everything in Dresden? And it was so bad. At one point, the British sent something like 800 bombers. Can you believe that? 800 bombers. And some of the bombers got bombed on by other bombers because they were all like in the air. So they were dropping all these bombs, and some of the bombers were hit by their own, Air Force because they're all on top of each other. So anyway, I mean, that's not funny, Mateo. We got to stop laughing. I'm just saying that's how crazy it was. I didn't mean to make Mateo laugh like that. So anyhow, okay. So now let's talk about this book. It's such an interesting book. I'm going to go over it. And part of the reason why I wanted to go over this is there's been so much going on in the world events, and hopefully there's not a World War III. So let's just say World War II was the last World War. Hopefully. Okay. So in this book, the first order of business is he writes this book from this a fictional character. And it becomes kind of clear in terms of what's going on, that his actual story and what happened to him at the Battle of the Bulge and how he was a prisoner of war. It's so hard for him to describe it that he kind of, makes it a point to describe it through this fictional character. And it starts with, so the fictional character, his name is Billy Pilgrim. Okay, so Billy Pilgrim is the person in the book, the protagonist, so to speak, right? And in the book, he talks about this guy, going to school. By the real author, he was at Cornell, and in 1943, he left Cornell so that he can go to World War II. So his fictional character, Billy Pilgrim, kind of has the same route. And then he becomes a chaplain, and he's going to World War II because the other chaplain died in the war, so he's going to replace him. And it's there's so many ironies, and that's kind of one of them, is that this guy is a chaplain, and he's going off to the ward so that he could kind of talk to the other troops and kind of work along and get people to heal and you know what the chaplains do, right? And now he's there in Germany, kind of toward the end of World War II, and him and his outfit, they have to do this kind of scouting mission of the Germans, right? And they have to get 4 soldiers to go behind enemy lines, like into where the German forces are, and do the certain reconnaissance and get information. So what happens is Billy Pilgrim, he's kind of he's a freaking chaplain, right? He's not a fighter, right? But he's selected, and there's these 2 super professional, in shape, awesome scouts that are selected. And then there's a 4th guy named Roland Weary. And the 4th guy, Roland Weary, he's only 18, so he's a kid basically, from Pennsylvania. And he's an interesting guy because he was picked on as a kid, so he's kind of holding a grudge. And one of the things he hates is when he either gets picked on or people leave him. So he gets very weary about it. I don't, that might just be a coincidence, his last name being Weary. Anyway, okay. So Roland, so these are the 4. We got Billy Pilgrim, Mr. Weary, and these 2 very, very awesome scouts. So they go in behind enemy lines, and as they're kind of going around, it's Billy Pilgrim, the main guy in the book, that can't keep up. He's kind of straggling behind them. And then the 2 scouts are getting way far in advance. And this guy, Roland Weary, he gets a little nervous. He's like, well, I don't want to keep up with the scouts because then we're going to totally ditch this guy, Billy Pilgrim. And so he goes back to find Billy, and he tells the scouts, hang on, let me go get the other guy. And then when he gets to Billy Pilgrim's just kind of chilling out. He's kind of lost and doesn't know what the hell to do. So Roland Weary's get the F up, we got to start moving, dude. We're going to get captured or something. And then Billy Pilgrim's not getting up, right? And it got so bad that they start fighting. So these 2 American troops are fighting each other, and Roland Weary is, about to kill him. He's just about to kill him until some German soldiers come, and then they get captured. But the funny part is that the German soldiers are there saying, what the fuck are you guys doing? You guys are killing each other. You're Americans and you're killing each other. And so the irony was that these German troops came to stop them. So they were saved by German troops, and they were saved from each other fighting. And then the first thing that Billy Pilgrim, and by the way, this is kind of how this author is. There's so many kind of crazy things that happen in here. And when they get captured, he makes it a point to describe of the German soldiers that capture them. The head guy is this middle-aged guy, and he's been, he was wounded from World War I, and he was wounded 4 times in his life. So the Germans gave him the nice boots, these really, really cool boots. So Billy Pilgrim is there, and the first thing he notices, oh, how lucky this guy must be to have those boots, right? But it's crazy because he's not really lucky. What'd you call him lucky? He's got the good boots, but he was wounded a bunch of times in World War I, this German soldier. So it's kind of one of those things. It's he seems like he's so well off with these nice boots, but he got them because he was wounded all these times. Anyhow, so they get captured by the Germans, okay? And then after they're captured, these 2, they end up hearing shots go off. And what happened is that the scouts were shot and killed by Germans. So the 2 scouts that were the professional, very good reconnaissance folks, they were shot because they were actively, still going, right? Whereas the 2 soldiers that got captured were fighting each other. So the fact that the other soldiers, the scouts, were doing their correct job, they were shot and killed. Whereas the 2 Americans who were freaking knuckleheads and fighting each other, the Germans didn't kill them because they weren't a threat at that point. They were just fighting each other. So they were saved by being so freaking stupid, right? And so they were saved by trying to kill themselves. So it was unfortunate because they heard the other 2, actually get shot and killed. And then after being captured, they're kind of being walked over to where they're gonna, they end up in these trains to go to like the prisoner of war camps. And then the German soldiers see a photographer, and then the photographer is like, well, getting a photo of you guys walking these American soldiers, it's not going to really look like a big deal. So what they did is they threw Billy into the bushes, and they made him come out. And then when he came out, he looked like he was being captured. That way, for the German newspaper, it would look awesome. Like, we caught this American soldier, hiding like in wait in the bushery. And then they load up all of these folks in the train. Now comes where things kind of get really weird, okay? And I'm going to explain why, and the kind of genius behind this book is that when Billy Pilgrim is then put into this train, he's captured and put in this POW train, there's all these other American prisoners of war, okay? And then his mind, the author says he gets like, what does he say? Unstuck in time. All right, so let me explain that. Meaning like his life like he starts picturing his life going like what it was in the future and what it was in the past and what it was in the future and what it was in the past. And this is kind of, in a way it's showing how the soldier is kind of coping with what just happened. He just got captured. He's in this prison train, right? And not knowing what the heck is going to go on. And then his mind starts going, like back and forth, right? And then in the book, there's this whole other story that keeps coming up. And that story is the following. In the future, this guy gets captured by aliens. And when the aliens capture him, they take him to this other planet called Tralmalfador, all right? And in that other planet, he starts living in that other planet. And it's like they take good care of him in that other planet, and everything's kind of cool in that other planet. And then they end up setting him up with, food and all this other great stuff. And so his mind starts like traveling in that future, all right? Because remember, he's not like stuck to the same kind of time frame as everyone else. And now he's kind of going in the future, and he's remembering, or he's living those days in the future in the kind of the UFO and the other planet before he starts coming back. And on this train, it's like he kind of goes in the future, then he comes back, and he's back on this prison train, and it's a disaster. It's so bad that, they're just kind of on a train track that's supposed to be freaking rolling, but instead of rolling, it's like stuck there for a few days. Like they're just like the prison temporarily is just the train. So everyone's kind of locked up in this train car and just waiting. And they don't know where they're going to go. They don't know how they're going to get there. They have no idea what is going on, right? All they know is that they're there. And one of the soldiers, he calls him a hobo, like he's kind of like all screwed up and everything. He keeps saying, this isn't that bad. This isn't that bad. Like he's kind of trying to make him feel better. But after 9 days, that hobo dies, right? So it's like the only guy that was kind of optimistic about it, the poor guy dies, okay? And then, do you remember his friend's name? The guy that he got captured with? Yeah, good. Roland Weary, all right? So Roland Weary is so pissed off at him all of this time, and that he gets injured like during the capture, and as he was walking, and now they're not really eating well and everything. Roland Weary keeps saying to everyone, I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to kill Billy Pilgrim because it's his fault I got captured, and I'm going to kill him. He's so mad at him. And to me, it kind of just shows, okay, of all the people in the world to be mad at, you're not mad at the Germans, right? You're not mad at Hitler. You're not mad at the Americans for sending you there. You're not mad at the army for making you go on this reconnaissance trip when you weren't a scout, right? You're not mad at any of that. Instead, you're mad at your fellow soldier that you decided to go back to try to help. And he didn't even like ask for your help, right? And you're mad at him of all people. But he is. That's who he's really, really angry at. Like, and it just, that's why I said, and this is why this author became such a interesting philosopher, because he would write these stories, but he wouldn't say any of this. Like he would just kind of write the story, and you kind of have to kind of gather that. But that's that is what Roland Weary is all pissed off about. He's all pissed off that his co-soldier, is that what it's called? Co-soldier, fellow soldier, right? He blames him for being on this prison train. All right. Then after 9 days, the train starts moving. And then it takes a couple days and they get them to a prison, like a prisoner of war camp. Okay. And this is so, everything here gets very interesting. When they get to and all of this is, again, he draws on all his experiences and what happened in the war. So it's like not really fiction. It's like a true story, but anyway, so he gets to the prison of war camp, and at the prisoner of war camp, they kind of unload everybody, right? They're unloading everyone. It's freezing cold, because it's Germany in the winter. And they start giving everybody coats, okay? And he gets kind of excited because he gets a kind of a cool coat, except that all of the coats came from dead soldiers. So all these soldiers that died, the Germans kind of collected the coats, and now they're giving it to POWs. So it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of cool. He gets a coat, right? But in another way, it's a coat of somebody that died, like a soldier that died. But he gets lucky, so to speak, because he's the only one that somehow he got a coat from a dead civilian as opposed to a dead soldier. So he got kind of like this really cool coat. So would you say that that's lucky? That's the good life, living the good life? Huh? Zeke is like, can I get that coat? No, Zeke. No. Okay. So anyway, so he's got this coat and you could draw the inference as you will. It's like, all of a sudden this guy is happy, or not happy, but he's like lucky that he got this coat. And then the crazy part is, in all of these coats, they have, there's kind of an issue. And that issue is there's all these dead bugs, or not dead, they're actually live. There's all these like bugs and other animals in the coats because they've collected from these dead people. So, there's like either bacteria that's growing or, lice or all these other kind of bugs. I don't know what kind of bugs there are, and he didn't know either. He just said there's all these like weird bugs and everything, right? So anyway, they're handed this coat, and then they're marched. They have to get naked and they have to march into these showers so that all the prisoners of war, they're going to end up finally taking a shower after like 10 days after they're being captured. And as soon as this happens, when he's about to get in the shower, or he's walking in there, he travels again into the planet that he was taken to. And he's at the planet and he's discussing how his life at Traumalfador in the future is. He's talking about how awesome it is, how nice it is, how they take care of him, how the aliens kind of give him advice, and how they give him all this like cool things to do. And then he travels back in time to when he was a kid, when he went to the Grand Canyon with his parents, like when he was a kid with his brothers and his parents. And then he remembers how awesome the Grand Canyon was when he was a little kid. This is before the war, right? And he starts living there, like going to the Grand Canyon. But even that's not that good because he's at the Grand Canyon and this French guy that came all the way from France to the Grand Canyon, he told them, like, there was this, the Grand Canyon is a big hole. Have you ever been there, Zeke? You've been in the Grand Canyon? No? Mateo? You've been in the Grand Canyon, right? So it's a big hole, right? Okay, so they go to the Grand Canyon, and then as they're enjoying it, this French guy kind of tells them, every year at least 3 people die by falling in there, So it kind of like, it takes away from this awesome trip, Oh, man. Then he goes to the Carlsbad Cavern. Have you been to the Carlsbad Cavern? I mistakenly thought it's here in San Diego's Carlsbad. But did you know it's a Carlsbad in the state of New Mexico? It's some sort of national park. So anyway, so then he starts explaining that. Now, this is kind of some of the things that I take from this, right? It's that this is a World War II book, and he's explaining how these soldiers kind of get through this ordeal, right? And part of how getting through this ordeal is that he's, remembering things that happened, and he's then remembering things in the future that happened. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is kind of I don't know if it's a coping mechanism or just kind of a reality or something, but this is what his mind is going through as he's about to take this shower. And then there's this interesting thing that he kind of explains. Okay. So they walk in, and all of these POWs are there naked, and they're about to take a shower, right? So they're under the shower head, and they're just standing there, right? And then he makes it a point in the book to say, okay, so somewhere there's a valve, and somewhere there's a hand that we can't see that's going to turn the valve. So I turned it this way. That's righty-tighty. Okay, so lefty-loose. They're going to turn the valve, and the water's gonna come. But we don't, like, it's a quick line in there. It's like some unseen hand, kind of like, anything in life. Like you could be at a red light and you don't know the driver behind you, and you don't know, like he could crash right into you, he could not. Like it's kind of like that unseen hand that's gonna have a big effect on your life, that's gonna turn the valve. And then he doesn't know if that valve is gonna bring out cold water, hot water, or, he doesn't say that, but it's clear, right? Like in kind of what he's going through. He doesn't know what the water is going to be like. If it's going to be hot or cold. And sadly, this is World War II, right? So we know the story of what happened to the victims in the concentration camps when they were told they're going to take a shower, right? Like it wasn't water that came out. It was like poison gas, right? So all of this is like, he has no idea what's going to happen. So as he's standing there, like everything's about to change, and he has no idea who's going to change it, how they're going to change it, or what exactly the change will be, right? So that's what he's kind of going through. Okay, thankfully the water wasn't too bad, right? So he took a shower, and then when they all come out, they finally get their coats, but there's poison gas on the coats, and it wasn't to kill the POWs; it was to kill off all of the the living animals and bacteria on the coats. So it's kind of a strange irony to get this really nice coat and to be warm, but you have poison gas on it so that all of the living mechanisms there were killed. Oh my God, I forgot to turn off my phone. Oh. No, we better not answer that, dude. That's insurance company. I have a lot of lawsuits with insurance agents. They're not, where the insurance is the opposing side. I better turn this off, because the one thing that will ruin my mood more than talking about a world war is talking to an insurance adjuster. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So anyway, so they take the shower, they get the coats, right? And then in the prisoner camp, in the prisoner of war camp, there's the American POWs, there's these British POWs. There's like a few Russian POWs, and apparently they treated the Russians the worst in this prisoner camp. And the British POWs, there was, in the beginning of the war, there was, as the author describes it, there was a clerical error with the Red Cross, and they accidentally sent these prisoners of war 500 parcels of food a month instead of 50 parcels a month. And the British prisoners of war were very good at like hoarding this and saving it and preserving all of this extra food that they had, right? And so everyone was jealous of the British prisoners of war because they had like butter and sugar and meat and tobacco, and they had everything in excess, right? So they were living large at the POW camp. And they were kind enough to, like, because they had all this extra stuff, they were kind of rationing a little bit extra to the American prisoners of war. So there was like this little hierarchy there within the camp. And sure enough, our guy then, this is not the best existence. So he starts remembering the future again. And then he starts something that I don't know how this guy thought of it. But anyway, so he goes in the future. He's thinking in the future. Then in the future, he gets into these different books, like sci-fi books, by an author named Kilgore Trout. Okay. And then this author describes some of those other books. I won't go into that detail, but it was really interesting. Anyway, so in the prisoner of war camp, he's remembering all of these things in the future. And kind of like, and then he starts describing, oh my God, that's such a cool book. It goes like this, it goes like that. That's a really cool book. It goes like this, it goes like that. But he's remembering all of this while he's at the prisoner of war camp. And then again, his mind starts going to, and then he goes back to the the planet where the aliens took him, Tralmalfador, and he's thinking about the color TV that he's enjoying, right? In the 60s, and he's thinking about his couch and the bed, and they have a pool table that they gave him. You like playing pool, Mateo? I bet you could beat me, but I love playing pool. All right, so he has a pool table there, and then he's this one I had to write this down. The stereophonic phonograph. All right, here's what it looks like. You know what? Have you ever had one of these guys? It's like a turntable with a big horn at it, right? Like this is like what they used in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and you can get music on it. Zeke, do you remember those? No, come on, dude. Zeke was there when they invented the telephone. You remember when they invented the telephone, Zeke? Zeke, I remember him telling stories like, and then I picked this thing up and I heard someone's voice. Remember that, Zeke? Zeke knows what I'm talking about. So he's picturing all this. And when is he picturing this, Mateo? In his prisoner of war camp. I love it. I loved like reading, like this is how he's getting through it. And then he even starts describing how that society lives in Tralmalfador. Like there's 5 different genders, and this gender does this, and this gender does that, and these are their roles, and this is how it goes, right? So, I mean, that is some very, very, very elaborate, right? And then he goes, and at one point, like he's in a lot of pain. Somebody gives him morphine. I think it was maybe one of the Brits that gave him morphine or something to kind of calm his pain down. And then when he finally was able to wake up and realize he's at the POW camp again, he has to go to the latrine, okay, the bathroom. And the bathroom, the other POWs were getting upset because some people would leave the bathroom worse than it was before. So they had this sign that said, "Please leave the latrine as tidy as you found it," which was funny because these POWs, they're worried about the latrine. So it just kind of shows like, oh, okay, this is their living day to day. This is what they're worried about. And then at one point, there's this big fight between like an American POW and a British POW. Guess what they fought about? Cigarettes. Okay, they were fighting over cigarettes. Here they are in a prisoner of war camp. They could be killed. They could be there for a month. Like, who the F knows, right? But the most important thing at that moment was to fight over the cigarettes. And then our guy then travels again into the future, and he sees, his life on this planet. The aliens gave him something, Mateo, on the planet. They gave him a porn star wife that he could sleep with, right? That was very nice of them. Okay, but get this. So he has this porn star wife that he's like sleeping with, okay? I'm not going to tell you her name because I don't want you to Google her, okay? Because I already did. She's a fictional character, damn it. Anyway, so he has this porn star wife in the future, and he's enjoying her, and then he's kind of like the aliens kind of check him out like he's in a zoo or something. And then he travels a little bit further into the future. He becomes an optometrist, like way later in the, way after the war, like 20 years after the war. He becomes a very successful optometrist, okay? And then he was at one point, he's with this 12-year-old patient, a boy, right? He's with this 12-year-old patient, like fitting him for glasses. And then he asked the 12-year-old boy, "Oh, how are things, at school or whatever?" And 12, "Oh, he's a good doctor," right? And then our guy, into the future with this 12-year-old boy, Mateo, he's like, "Oh yeah." And then he starts describing how life is for him when he lives in the planet. He's telling this to the 12-year-old boy. And to this 12-year-old boy, he's like, "Yeah, it's not that bad. I have this at the planet. The aliens give me this. The aliens give me that. I get to sleep with a porn star," right? That part's pretty good, huh? So who is he telling this to? This 12-year-old boy, right? This boy patient. And to me, and so eventually he has to stop being a doctor because the last thing that they want doctors to do, right? Can you imagine when you were 12 years old, you go to a doctor and he's talking to you about banging a porn star in front of aliens on this island like a million miles away? Wouldn't that be weird? You know what I'm saying? I don't know which doctor Zeke went to, but that would be weird for people like me and Mateo. So anyway, now that's some funny shit, right? This whole thing is funny. So this is the genius of this book. Like he's kind of describing how veterans, how like things get weird, right? Because they had to process everything that was going on, and then later in life, it's like they have, it's like fragmented, or this happened, that happened, and they can't really function sometimes with the rest of society because like what he had to do when he coped with the war. Now he's like a successful optometrist, and he's talking to this little boy, and he's talking to him about this planet that he thinks that he goes to and lives on every now and then. So it's like, whoa, right? But again, it's funny the way it's kind of described. And then what happens next is that they leave, the Germans transfer the prisoners to the city of Dresden in East Germany. And this is, the point of the book. It starts talking about the bombing of Dresden, because they transferred these guys to Dresden because they want the prisoners there to start kind of like rebuilding the cities, kind of like, because now it got bombed, right? But when they get transferred there, there's more bombings when they get transferred there. Now, side story, in real life, the author, he was in a train, like in a prisoner of war camp train, and the British mistakenly thought that was the German military, and they bombed that train, and something like 100 or 150 American troops died, or Allied troops died, because they got bombed on by their own, country, by the Brits, right? Because of that mistake, like they thought it was a different type of train or whatever the heck, right? So anyway, so they end up going to Dresden. And as soon as they get to Dresden, it's getting bombed. And now Billy Pilgrim, our guy, he's nervous that the Americans or British are going to kill him, right? Because they're prisoners of war in Dresden, and they're nervous that they're going to get killed by their own, governments because of, they're just bombing everything. Then the reason why it's called Slaughterhouse-Five. This is how they protect themselves. All right. They protect themselves by doing the following. They go there. They get the prisoner camp. Then is like a slaughterhouse, right? They go to an area. There's this like meat locker shelter area where the pigs are sheltered. And pigs are sheltered, so that they could grow, because you got to grow the pig so that they could, have the bacon and the pork chops and the big ribs and all that jazz, right? So they have to like grow the pig somewhere. And you have to keep them safe from, other animals. They have to keep them safe from like disease or cold weather and things like that. So there's an area where in the slaughterhouse where they keep all the pigs like safe, right, and secure before they go slaughter the pigs. But in the end of World War II, the Germans have no pigs to slaughter because, it's the war, and they don't have an abundance of farmers that could get them the pigs or whatever, right? So the prisoners of war, the best place that they could get shelter is in the same place where the pigs have shelter before they're slaughtered. All right? What do you think? The gabagool. Right? Not the best place, but if you got to live, you got to do something, right? So this is the place where they take shelter. And it's kind of, weird. Then as this is happening again, he kind of like keeps traveling back and forth in time. Then he travels to his daughter's wedding that's in the future. And in his daughter's wedding, it's an awesome wedding. So he starts thinking about that, which is a much better thing to think about, I think, than the slaughterhouse that they're in. But he starts thinking about his daughter's wedding, and this weird thing that he talks about that when I read this, I was just so amazed. After his daughter's wedding, he watches a World War II movie. All right. He didn't like the movie, so he watched it backwards, right? You ever watched a movie backwards? Like, I haven't either, but he watched it backwards. But the most beautiful thing happened as he watched it backwards. Okay. I'm going to read this as fast as I can, because he's watching it backwards. So it starts with everything being devastated because it's in the end. American planes full of holes and wounded men and corpses take off backwards from the airfield in England. Over France, a few German fighter planes flew backwards at them, sucked bullets and shell fragments from some of the planes and crewmen. They did the same for wrecked American bombers on the ground, and those planes flew up backwards safely back to Germany and England. The formation flew backwards over a German city that was in flames. The bombers opened their bomb bay doors, exerted a miraculous magnetic which shrunk the fires, gathered them into cylinder steel containers, and lifted the containers into the bellies of the planes. The containers were stored neatly in racks. The Germans below had miraculous devices of their own with long steel tubes. Those are the gun, and they used them to suck fragments from crewmen's and planes to save them. But there were still a few wounded Americans, though, and some of them bombers were in bad repair. Over France, German fighters came up, made everything and everybody good as they, came back and took everything off, right? When the bombers got back to their base, the steel cylinders were taken from the racks and shipped back to the United States of America, where factories were operating day and night, dismantling the cylinders, separating the dangerous contents into minerals. Touchingly, it was mainly women who did this work. Because why were the women doing it? Because all the men were in the war, right? So all the women are getting the bombs back and they're taking it apart. The minerals were then shipped to specialists in remote areas. It was their business to put them into the ground, to hide them cleverly so they would never hurt anyone again, right? Because all those minerals, watching the movie backwards, they put them all back and they put them back everywhere. The American pilots turned in their uniforms and they became high school kids again. Right? It was so touching. It's so cool. And it was as easy as just watching the World War II movie backwards. And by watching it backwards, it was like, whoa, all of these bombers are stopping the fires, taking everything back, putting the bombs back in the racks, and then they're flying back. They're sending the bombs back home. They're taking it apart. They're putting it away. All of these people that were killed, they're coming back. They're turning in their uniforms, and they're high school kids again. So it was just, God, man, that was really, really cool. I tried explaining that to somebody, and then all I got in return was, "Why would anyone watch a movie backwards?" I was like, damn it, never mind. Okay. A few other things. He then in his future life, as he's like remembering it and everything, at one point with his family, they kind of go and they see this, like, it was like a barbershop quartet or some sort of like musical thing, right? But it was weird because of all the, I don't want to touch the mic. Would it be bad if I did that? Right? They're doing all this, they're doing all that, right? All of these sounds and everything. It's driving him nuts, right? Because he's thinking of the war with all of these like banging sounds or whatever the heck it was. It's just reminding him of the war and this and that. So he has to like run away from that band, and he can't like handle it. It's kind of, but he describes it kind of in a funny way, but it's kind of like, it shows that PTSD of these soldiers, and how it's going to be hard for them, like things in society that other people enjoy, these poor guys, like it scares them or something, right? Or reminds them of something that they don't want to remember at that time, So, but he kind of, it's just genius the way he describes it in these funny scenes, but they're like these like crazy things. And he describes that he goes back to the aliens, and the aliens give him this advice. The advice is, just look at the pretty things and ignore the ugly things. Wouldn't that be easy to do, right? And he says, well, if I could be that selective, damn it, I will try. Then he thinks his favorite part of the war was after the war, and he was still there in Germany. It was like a warmer day and he was like free, and he was in a wagon, and in the wagon, he's enjoying the sun, and the other guys are kind of like pushing the wagon. They collect some souvenirs. They're kind of like hanging out. There's a horse that's pushing it, but then they come across these. Then he's like, oh, I just remembered though. There was these two German like doctors or something. And then they come to the American soldiers that are just, they won the war, right? And they start yelling at the soldiers. They're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? You look at your horse. The horse is about to die. Like here you are drinking and partying and having fun and going around in this wagon, enjoying the sun. but it's going to end because you're not taking care of the horse. Like, you can't see the horse about to die. So then all of a sudden he's like, damn it, I got to take care of the horse now. Okay. My favorite part of the book, or one of my favorite parts, okay, kind of, and now more in the future. Remember I told you the sci-fi books that he really digs? Okay, so he's in Manhattan one day and he's kind of walking around, and then there's like an adult bookstore. Zeke, this is where you come in. There's an adult bookstore, right? But back then, they couldn't, like, in the windows, they had to have like legitimate books, and so he saw in the window this, like, the sci-fi book by his favorite author, Kilgore Trout, right? So he walks in, but it's an adult bookstore, and it's like everywhere there's like porn books, or you could go and put a quarter in a machine and watch dirty pictures. You know what I'm saying? Zeke, you still do that? So anyway, so you could do all this, right? But he doesn't want to do that. He goes to buy this sci-fi book, right, in this adult bookstore, because that's what he's interested in. Like, they try to get him to watch the dirty books or go and get a hooker, whatever it is, right? Because that's what the store really does, right? But he's interested in the book. So these guys that work there and the patrons or whatever, they start making fun of him. They're like, dude, this guy's a real pervert. He's here. And instead of looking at these beautiful naked women, he just wants to read this book that's not even really for sale. It's just there as a decoy so that we're allowed to have window dressing and we could operate. It's not even what this pornographic bookstore is for. But he becomes the odd man out because he's trying to buy a legitimate book, and they kind of laugh at him and everything. So he's kind of like an outcast. What do you think? By the way, we're going to do dad jokes, but before we do, if you want to buy this book, I'll put a link to the book. And I think if you buy it through the link, I might get like 20 cents or something from anyone that buys the book. Yeah! The Joe Samo 20-cent fund. And if you write me a nice email, I'll send that 20 cents to you. Okay? Because I love you guys. Okay, at the end of every show, let me see. I wrote down some of these dad jokes. I want to go over the dad jokes. Let's see. I'm so good at sleeping that I could do it with my eyes closed. Yay or nay on that one? Okay. I didn't get this one. Okay, maybe you get it. Okay, time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like a banana. No, what do you think? Yeah? Okay, I got that one. 6:30 is my favorite time of the day. Hands down. Right? 6:30. Yeah, the 6 and the 30 is down. Whenever you get bad sausage, it's just the worst. All right. One more. My dog is a genius. I asked him, what's 2 minus 2? He said nothing. Well, I got one more. I used to hate facial hair, but then it grew on me. See you next week.